This is the Conrad Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Oh, for 5 years. 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you live from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, broadcasting via the auditory and visual mediums to my fellow delinquents across the globe. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is October the 27th, 2024. This is episode 470 of Workshop Radio. How in the world are all my fellow delinquents out there? Again, this is spooky season, Halloween. You know, we take a slight different bent here near the last week of October to share our love of all things horror, scary, post-apocalyptic, dystopian. Whew, what a mouthful. And so once again, we have 3 episodes. I looked back last year and we did 3 actually. So this is going to be a fun one. We're starting out tonight with our special guest, Will, or Worm, a good friend of mine. We'll bring him on in a moment. Then sometime between now and Thursday, Becky and I are going to do our top 10 Stephen King films. And then Thursday evening, actually Halloween works out good. It's a Thursday. We are going to do the Ghoulman Tim's Toolbox of Horrors. I'm pretty excited about that. So hang in there. But with that, I'll stop my rambling on and let's bring on our co-host for the evening, Mr. Worm. How are you, brother?
Hello, doing very well. Thank you.
Good to bring you back. I think this will be your second appearance or third. How many have you been on? Second?
I think it's second. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the Halloween rundown last year as well, which I am honored to be one of those guys. You know, I've been a horror guy my whole life, so it's awesome.
Didn't take us very long when we first met. We bonded over. Actually, hang on, I got to show you guys this. So, if you can see this right here, this is Nocino. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes. And this is made specifically by Worm. And this is an Italian liqueur, correct?
Right. Yes. Yep.
Made with walnuts, right?
Right. Yep. Black walnuts. I'll leave some mystery. People can look it up, but it's native to the Bologna region of Italy. I have a friend that's Italian, and you grew up spending his summers over there with his family, and I guess he says that everybody in that area would have their own recipe, and a few years ago he found his grandpa's handwritten recipe when he was going through some papers and shared it with me and a couple other friends, and we've been making batches of it and sharing it. And yeah, you took a liking to it when I shared some with you. So
I most definitely did. Now here is the funny story about this exact bottle. Of course, Will gave me this at it was at the workshop days this year. We did the Gully days, which was great, and I was super excited. And I said, I'm going to be a little selfish with this, and I'm going to bring it home to my bar instead of sharing it, because I love, anyway, gifts are great no matter what, but man, there's something special about a homemade bottle of alcohol. So Becky and I are very, whenever we go to the States, we try to max out the amount of alcohol we're allowed to bring back because it's cheap and it's different. So we each had 3 bottles in each bag, in each of our bags. That's our limit. And of course, yours went in Becky's bag. They misplaced her bag. And so I was quite nervous because it was in transit the entire time she was gone to Spain. So she flew from Tennessee, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal. The bag was misplaced and it followed her all around. It actually landed in Montreal while she was there, but she couldn't get back through the gate. So it sat in Montreal for 10 days while she went to Spain, came back, and she was able to get it. And it was in one piece. So I was pretty happy. So thank you for that gift. This is the first time I opened it this evening. And before we go into everything else, I think I come up with a new use for this. I am going to, I enjoy my old fashions quite a bit. And central to an old fashioned is bitters. Angostura bitters is one of my favorites. And I've realized why I like this so much, because this has a very clovey flavor.
Yeah.
So I am going to try this in place of the bitters in my next old fashioned and see how it goes.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's interesting. I know It's very popular as an additive to coffee or like espresso in particular. And I bet it. I haven't done much with it, in culinary uses, but I bet like ice cream, there's probably adding a little because it's fairly sweet, but it's like you said, it's got that spiciness, got a little I don't know, yeah, it's a very interesting, unique flavor.
I think I'm going to order one of those. You get the little shaker tops that come with a rubber stopper for bitters specifically. I'm going to order one and just try it out because I think that's going to be my go-to. But
yeah, that'd be cool.
So you were here last year, and you're a man or a jack of all trades, however you want to put it. You have been a busy dude over the last little while. So what have you been up to in the last 12 months, 365 rotations around the sun?
Oh boy. Yeah, it's been pretty nonstop this whole year. I think when I was on here last year, one of the things that was just sort of starting to get rolling was getting back into filmmaking, which when I was, high school, just coming out of high school and college, and I pursued filmmaking for 10, somewhere between 10 and 15 years, with limited success. I had a few things, went to festivals, and, I worked on some other projects, but it just didn't, wasn't making a living or anything, and went on and did other things. But now that I've had some success in some other areas, I've come back to it, and I've been actually producing some things. And so I think when I was on here last, I had already produced a short film called Word of Mouth. That it's kind of a sci-fi, it's a comedy with a dystopian sci-fi twist. It'd make a really good Black Mirror episode. And it was finished in the early part of the year and started going out to festivals. And we got into a festival called the Holly Shorts out in LA, Hollywood. And it was screened at the Chinese theater, which is awesome. that alone was like like worth making it. That's just so cool to go. It's such a historic landmark and everything. And technically, it's eligible for an Oscar now, also Oscar nomination. So that's kind of cool to be able to say.
That's a bucket list item right there, man.
Yeah, right. And pretty good for my first foray back into filmmaking, I guess. I got lucky on that one. A really talented group of people. And like I said, I just I executive produced it, basically invested in it, funded it. And I was an extra in one scene as well. So I got to be on screen, so that's neat too.
So was that the film that you went to Florida to do, or was that the next one that you went to?
The next one, so the Word of Mouth we shot in LA in the late summer of 23, and then in spring of this year, I had over the winter I was kind of in negotiations and talks to get this next film made, which is called The Hellgate, and it's a feature that we shot down in Jacksonville, Florida. And it is the guy that made it. He's a first-time feature director, but he'd made some shorts that had got a little buzz, gone to festivals and things, and through a friend of a friend, I just kind of made contact with him, and I liked the script, and I liked his his style and vision, and he refers to it as a love letter to 80s horror and metal, which is that sounds great to me. It's on my list of post-apocalyptic movies, even though it's a little bit of a stretch. So I'll go ahead and spoil, leak that. It is Return of the Living Dead. I love it. Like when I was a kid, my mom would rent movies like that. When I was 5 years old, we were watching Return of the Living Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Stuff like that had like a comedic element, but also, some like, pretty extreme gore and stuff. But she would just be like, oh, it's just a movie. Don't worry. That's all fake blood and makeup. And so that's where my horror journey began early.
I love that story. Is your mom, she's still around?
Yes.
Is she still into horror?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe not as much as she used to be, but yeah, she's still. I'm trying to think. Yeah, usually like for her birthday, if there's a good horror movie out, I'll take her. But yeah, she's not specifically so much like a horror. She likes all the blockbuster stuff and the Marvel stuff, and yeah, she's kind of pretty broad. But back in like when I was in elementary school, middle school, we would have like slumber party, in the 90s.
Sure.
We'd have slumber parties, and back then you'd rent like 5 or 7 movies, for $5 for the weekend, and we just stay up all night watching movies, and we'd get Child's Play or Child's Play 2 or 3 and Mikey, like a lot of weird. We just I miss the video store so much because you would just find unexpected things and just try them, and it's like, okay, well, that's what we got.
I'm gonna throw in a plug here to anybody who's in Alberta that ends up listening to this. I discovered a video rental store in Edmonton the other day called The Lobby, and it's exactly what you would expect. It's street level, but you go in and then it's downstairs, so it's not the most ideal location. They got posters everywhere, magazine cutouts all over the walls. You go down, this guy named Kevin, he's a filmmaker himself, and he just does it because he can afford to do it. He says it just breaks even. It's mostly horror, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, and you can rent movies for $5 or you can buy them off the shelf as well. And what an experience. I had not had that experience in damn near 20 years. My son-in-law and I went in, and random folks would just come in, just like the olden days, and we would just talk about movies. We were there for like an hour and a half. You jump into one conversation, jump into the next, and then you buy a few things and you leave. And I want to tell you, it was every bit as worth it as it used to be.
I bet, man. Yeah, I had some friends that worked at a local video store when I went to college up in Kansas City. It was called SRO Video. And it was, like I said, just a little, it was a good sized place, but it was locally owned, very independent. And it was, they had movies organized by like where, nationality, then by director, instead of just like genre. It was like one of those places. They had all the art films, but they also had, just all the weird, stuff you couldn't find anywhere else. And then since I had a connection, they let me go in the basement, which is where they had stuck all the old VHS tapes there was all kinds of crazy, bizarre stuff, like, stuff that I'd still never seen anywhere else. And I so wish I had kept in touch with them, and, because I'm sure they just liquidated all that stuff at some point. And I probably would have, well, I don't know. I would just have it in a box somewhere, probably, I guess. But
I know. I did that a few years ago, started buying a bunch of VHSs, and then I was like, I'm not using them. They're collecting dust. They became a thing that I felt like I needed to have. So I liquidated all of that, and I've gotten into some Blu-rays and 4Ks, and I've just been buying. We've basically set up our own little movie rental shop at the house for me and the girls. So, we each take a turn picking a movie. They'll go through, they pick the movie, and then we sit down and watch it. No commercials, no interruptions, no, internet connection dropping out for a minute. It's fun. We've had a good time with it so far.
Oh yeah. And it is something that, I've heard increasingly people complaining about, like the streaming services, because you never know when something's going to come or go. And there's even issues with, when you purchase something, if the licensing changes, I think it's happened more with books, but I think I've heard about it happening with TV shows and movies as well, where if you buy it on Amazon and for whatever reason they lose the license, you don't own it anymore. It just goes away. There's something about, physical media. I think people are realizing, there's some value there, but also I think for some reason in particular, it seems like with horror people, the physical object is a thing, I still do have a bunch of VHS tapes. I have weeded them out. Like the ones I have are like the weird stuff that I just found at a pawn shop that, that I feel like I'm like archiving it in a way, but I know that like the Hellgate and the next one that I'm working on right now, or that is in production right now, they're both talking about releasing physical media.
Excellent.
The plan.
Well,
yeah.
sign me up for that, because I will. Anyway, I'll sign myself up, but I'll definitely buy them on Blu-ray, whatever ends up coming out, because it's pretty cool. I have a section of books on my bookshelf of authors, that I've met and know and conversed with. And so it'd be pretty cool to be able to have a little section of movies of folks that I can support,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, maybe next time I see you, I do have a couple of DVDs from 20 years ago, the stuff that I was making back then. Cause I was, that's how I was doing. It was so small, my productions back then. I was burning my own DVDs, printing the discs, the tops, and printing the inserts, doing it all myself, and then I would just travel around and, go to shows and stuff and try to sell them out of my trunk, basically.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
What do you want to slide into your list? We can start there. And I was, what, you've got 20. So why don't you knock out your first 2, or you want to work through 10? Well, how do you want to do it? What would you like to do?
I think, well, I mean, I've already crossed out 1. I think I'm going to whittle it down to something like 10. We don't need to go through the whole 20, but,
you grab one, and then once we exhaust that, then I'll go to mine and we'll go back and forth.
Okay. And are you doing these in any particular order?
Okay. So because I've done lists before, top 5 this, top 5 that, I decided this time to go by decade. It just because I have a master list. At some point, I'm going to do some content around all my favorite apocalyptic films by decade. But I just picked my top kind of 10. The only decade from the 60s to the 2010s I don't have something is the 70s. So you're going to have to help me in there. I have some picks, but they're not in my top 10. So
okay. Oh, really?
But, yeah.
I think 70s is pretty well represented in my list.
Excellent. That makes me happy.
Though some of these are things that I haven't seen for years. I just kind of racked my brain. I was trying to, that's why I have 20, is I just wrote down anything that came to mind. And then I thought I'd kind of weed them out, but I just didn't have time. But I'm going to just start the first thing that comes to mind. So I found when it comes to post-apocalyptic movies, for me, I go more sci-fi than horror. So and I don't know if it even counts as sci-fi. I guess it sort of is, but it's more of action adventure, really. Mad Max is my number 1 when I think of post-apocalyptic series or movie. Because and of course I love Fury Road. I feel like probably Road Warrior was the best in a lot of ways, and I scoffed at Thunderdome, when I was younger. I loved it when I was a kid, but then when I became like went to college and got fancy, I was like, oh, this is ridiculous, And it is kind of, if you know I guess the story behind it is, George Miller, I guess, or so I've heard. He had like this script about these kids, basically, like almost a Lord of the Flies type thing, where they're, stranded in this, oasis type place. And that was supposed to be a whole different movie, but he wasn't getting funding for that. So he just stuck that plot into Thunderdome. And that's why it feels kind of weird, kind of out of place, but I actually like it now, probably on nostalgic grounds. But and actually, we for Radioactive Theater, which is another thing I've been working on that I didn't get to earlier, but maybe toward the end. That's one of my plugs I'll put in at the end. We did our Halloween show last weekend, which is also our 6th anniversary show, and I dressed up as Dr. Dealgood, who I didn't even know I didn't know that was his character's name. I just remembered the character from Thunderdome. And he's the announcer, the guy that comes out and, he says, he's actually the one that says, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. And, dying time's here. He's a memorable character, but he's only on screen for like 3 minutes total, probably in the movie. And that was my costume for Halloween. Nobody got it. Nobody knew what I was. But
that's the best part. Charlotte, my daughter, is dressing up as Mia Wallace from Pulp Fiction this year. And I can almost guarantee that not another 14-year-old kid at that school will have a clue who it is. But I know who it is. And she picked it. There was the only influence I had on her was that we watched the film, and I think she really fell in love with it. So I'm excited. She said she can't put the syringe, in the chest because school, but everything else she's going to do, and leave the fake cigarettes at home too.
So does she have the blood coming out? Is she that at that?
I think she's going to make a little blood for her nose, but I think that's about as far as she could probably get away with.
Yeah, right.
But the costume's awesome. It's actually really cool.
Nice.
So so Mad Max, just a couple of minutes on that. What makes that such an appealing movie for you?
Oh, yeah, good. Well, I think it's the same thing with, I think why people love Fury Road so much, and like George Miller is just a master of world building, and the cars are so cool. Like it's got this, and it was, it's an independent film. They shot it in Australia when there was practically no film industry there, right? And they did all these crazy stunts, and there's documentaries about it that I recommend, but I can't remember what they're called.
That's okay.
But I think they're on Amazon. I love the rawness of it, and there's just the passion is on the screen. Like there's a lot of work that went into it, and it's just it's like it has that serial, it's an action adventure kind of I don't feel like it takes itself too seriously, but it's a compelling story, and I love that it respects the viewer as well. Like, not everything is like spoon-fed to you, like narrative wise, they just show you a lot of stuff, and it's just like fascinating. It's like, what's going on there? How did this come to be? You never really find out. So it just gives you, a lot to think about as well, I think that's a big thing for me. I love world building,
and when filmmakers treat you like an adult who can figure things out on your own, that makes me very happy.
Yes. Yeah, and I feel like he hits, like if you think about Fury Road, it was in particular, like it's a it's like a 2 hour or 2.5 hour long car chase practically. There's not a lot of plot or character development, but there's like the part where they drive through the wet areas, and there's those people walking around on stilts, and it's like creepy, and it's like what's going on, but and they don't explain it, it's a thing that happens, and it adds to the world, and the whole Immortan Joe fortress and everything, and you can tell that he's got these people kind of enslaved, and there's this kind of caste system or whatever, but they don't give him an origin story, like it's just like, here's the world, and it's all there, and it just, I don't know, to me and now there's video games, and they have expanded the universe in other ways. Which is actually, I think, probably where the name Dr. Dealgood came from. I don't know if they ever even credited that character in Thunderdome. I know he has appeared later, like in a video game. Like when I was researching the character, like the costume and stuff, I found some other information I didn't know about him. But yeah, I think that's it. It's just such a cool, aesthetic, and also, I don't know, I just like, Mad Max is so I think why I like Road Warrior, probably that's probably my favorite, because I feel like he's still a very strong character, and he's still kind of, I don't know if I'd say he develops necessarily, but he's kind of goes on a little bit of an odyssey, and there's the, it's just a satisfying plot. Whereas Mad Max, there's like kind of the family. It's more of a revenge movie, It's like a little more typical of a narrative, and it's, I guess technically it's not even exactly post-apocalyptic. I think there's, I guess, gas shortages, and there's like the breakdown of society has happened, but the nuclear bombs haven't dropped yet, so it's kind of leading up to it, I guess technically.
I get a little. I'm cool with getting a little flexible and gray with those terms, but
yeah.
Yeah. I'll throw out. So I'm going to give a bonus pick right quick, even though I could only stick to 10, but I realized a little while back, I decided that I was going to fill in the gaps of my watching history for apocalyptic dystopian kind of movies. And there was two that I hadn't seen before. And the first was the original, the very first apocalyptic nuclear apocalypse movie, and it was called Five. Just it's spelled out as a word, and it just takes place with 5 people who have survived a nuclear apocalypse, and it took place in 1951. So we're only talking 6 years after the advent, the first time that a nuclear bomb was dropped. Great film. I won't go into real detail, but I just wanted to throw it in there before we got too far in so that other folks might want to check it out. Yeah. I eventually bought it on Blu-ray. I think it might be Arrow Films. I can't remember, but it came from overseas. So I do have it now, which was kind of cool. But so I will start with my first pick, and this is from 1960. This is another one that I hadn't seen last year, and this is called The Day the Earth Caught Fire. And it's a cheesy title. It just reeks of 1960s design, but it's such a well-acted movie. It basically opens up. It's very tense the entire time. It uses lighting and sepia tones really well in the whole thing. And basically, the Earth has been knocked out of orbit, and it is slowly getting closer and closer to the sun. And it deals with water shortages and the breakdown of society and lawlessness. And it was a way better film than I expected it to be. And it is a way better film than it had any right to be. I honestly thought it was just going to be one of those like nuclear monster type movies, with that title, like the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman or the Attack of the Radioactive Spider. I might've made that one up. I don't know, but that's what I expected it to be. But it was a lot better. It's worth watching for anybody out there who hasn't seen it. So, give it a go. It's, I would liken it to The Road in that it's bleak and not really fast paced by any means, but it certainly isn't as, not as bleak as The Road. Let's leave it at that. I don't want to spoil it. I know it's a 60-year-old movie, but if anybody out there hasn't seen it, look it up. I think I rented it on iTunes for like $5 or something like that. So worth watching.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm making notes. I'm going to have to check these out. I've been so busy this year. I think I've only watched like 4 movies this year.
That's all right. Whatever, man. I take years where I see nothing, and then I'll take years where I'll watch 100 films in a year. So you just don't know. And this year's been good, but it's mostly been classics that I've gone back and watched with my girls. So and a few in the theaters.
Yeah.
So what's your next one? What do you got?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just going down the list, the second one that came to mind was, I already mentioned Return of the Living Dead, but going back to Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, I consider, that's, again, it's a sort of a post-apocalypse, right? It's a zombie apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And, I don't have anything new to offer. There's, everybody knows about Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, right? It's like, they're just great movies. Well, Dawn of the Dead in particular. Day of the Dead, though, I wish I almost like Day of the Dead more in some ways, just conceptually. Like, I think I think Dawn of the Dead's very smart, the commentary on the consumerist, culture and all that. And it's great, but again, the world building, I think, is more, and it does world building. I guess this is going to be a theme. This was not planned, but because it opens in Pittsburgh, I believe, and you got the SWAT guys. I guess that's what I started to say. The comment here, the great anti-hero story. I think when I started talking about Road Warrior versus Mad Max, I was going to say Mad Max is just such a badass. He's just a great character. He's just fun. He's just unapologetic. He's just, he's just going to get some shit done. He's going to do what he needs to do. And I just, that's a fun character. But yeah, so Dawn of the Dead, so it's, the SWAT team or whatever they are, storming the apartment building, and there's the people with their, so there's definitely is some kind of world building, but then it's all, just in the mall. So I think it's sort of limited to these people's experience, which, of course, again, it's great. But what I really like about Day of the Dead is, even though, again, they're secluded in they're in a smaller space, it's like the military, and they're doing experiments on the zombies. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And, there's I think Bud or Bob, the zombie or whatever, that, they're trying to train him. And I look, it's interesting to see. It's like far enough removed from everything going crazy where they're like, they're analyzing it. It's not just a horror movie where you're running from zombies anymore. It's like, okay, this is the world now. How are we going to proceed? And that's pretty interesting, I think. Which actually reminds me of something I'll throw in here as an honorable mention that certainly nobody will have ever seen or heard of, because a friend of mine wrote it and we made a short of it. It was called Keeping It Together. And it was a zombie, post-apocalyptic sitcom in the style of Full House, almost directly referencing Full House and Growing Pains and that sort of thing, where it's a family stuck in a house, during the zombie apocalypse and having hijinks, And
I love it.
Yeah,
of all the Living Dead movies, or George A. Romero, I'm the biggest fan of Night of the Living Dead, the original.
Yeah.
But I did go back, and I think it was after we talked last year, and I watched Return of the Living Dead, right? That's the heavy metal one?
Yes.
Which isn't a Romero film, is it?
No, yeah. And I could go into detail on that, but it's actually written by Dan O'Bannon, I think it is, who wrote Alien, interestingly. Yeah. And the premise is like that Night of the Living Dead was a real event that was fictionalized in the film, as a way to cover it up, and that it was a little bit different than they said, and so
I'm not a huge fan of either Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, at least the original. I think it's because I didn't see them back then, and I went back and watched them later, and it's kind of like if you've never seen, I'm trying to think of some of the classics that haven't aged very well, but anyway, if you go back to some of the classics but I really, really like Night of the Living Dead, or Return of the Living Dead. So I've watched that twice in the last year, and I really enjoyed it for its camp, but also the ending is awesome. It had everything I wanted. And so it's definitely my second favorite in that, even though they're connected, but they're not connected. I really enjoyed that a lot. It is top notch. Everything 80s, it's honestly what I wanted Jason Takes Manhattan to be, and it wasn't. If you know what I mean. Like, have you ever seen Friday the 13th 8, where he goes to Manhattan?
Oh yeah.
And he really only spends about 3 minutes in New York City, and the rest is on some random boat somewhere.
Right.
And all I want is that 80s grungy urban motif, and Jason going around, chopping heads off heroin dealers, and you don't get any of that. But this kind of satiated that for sure. That whole 80s acid rain, punk rocker, heavy metal, just hate the world. I love it. Was great. Yeah.
And it does end with an apocalypse they basically nuke there's spoilers, 40-year-old movie. They end up nuking the town at the end, right?
Reminds me
I guess
a bit
it's
of
not a world-ending thing. But.
If you've seen the remake of The Crazies, where the ending in that, I don't know, similar anyway.
Yeah, I know I saw it when it came out, and I didn't like it. I need to go back and watch it again. I had different expectations because I really, because the original Crazies, and again, I need to watch that again too, because I loved the premise, but I didn't feel like it was executed as well as it could have been. So I was thinking, oh, well, now they've got a bigger budget. Maybe they can, it'll be like on a grander scale, or so. Because like the thing I thought was interesting about the Crazies was kind of the martial law lockdown aspect, because it's like otherwise it's just another kind of zombie movie, even though they're technically not zombies, I guess, right?
I love the remake, but with Timothy Olyphant in it, it's a remote drop movie for Becky and I. We'll watch that anytime, any place. We've seen it probably a dozen times now, and it's good. But
yeah, I'll check it out again. I'll put it back on my list here.
So I'm going to jump ahead on my list simply because this pick kind of complements what you just talked about. But again, now I have grown out of love with Zack Snyder. I don't love his new stuff, but I love 2004's Dawn of the Dead. Mm-hmm. And probably because I saw that before I saw the remake, or the original, is probably why I love 04's version so much. But that opening, that first 10 minutes, is some of the most perfect collapse media I've ever seen. Just where, she's working at the hospital, she comes home, she falls asleep, she wakes up, her husband turns to a zombie, she has to fight off her husband and jump out the window, gets in the car, drives, gets in a car crash, and then hijinks ensue once they go to the mall. Mm-hmm. And I've mentioned it 100 times, but I am a huge fan of claustrophobic movies that take place with a very small cast in a confined state of being or a setting. And that, I think that's probably why I loved it. It was fun. It was the violent, fast zombies that we've just been introduced to 2 years later, or 2 years earlier and 28 days later. And has a perfect soundtrack. It was cool looking, so I think, it's such a toss up between that and 28 Days Later for my favorite aughts zombie film. But yeah, so there it is. 2004 Dawn of the Dead, definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I was a big snob at that time when that came out, and I was a purist about the originals and the fast, I was one of those, I thought the fast zombies was heresy, but now looking back, it never occurred to me that basically in Return of the Living Dead, the zombies run and stuff too, so I'm a hypocrite. I didn't even realize it, but I need to take another look at that. So do you think the issue with the original Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, it's like a pacing thing? Is it just kind of, because they are pretty slow?
Yes, and here's the deal. I mean, I like a slow movie. I watched recently with my girls, we're all going to the World's Fair, and I watched independently of them. I saw the TV Glow. They're both made by Gen Z filmmakers, same filmmaker. They're pseudo horror. Anyway, either way, they're as slow paced a film as I have seen in a very long time. And I was really impressed that it was made by a Gen Z and it was marketed to Gen Z / Gen Alpha kids. And it wasn't a huge hit, but it wasn't a complete failure either. So but yes, I find those two, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, the pacing is it just doesn't do it for me. I mean, and again, Night of the Living Dead is a perfect film, and it's not a fast-paced film. It's a bunch of people standing around in a home talking, but there's something about those other two. I don't know. Maybe if it's the color, I don't know. I'm not even sure. But you're definitely on something there with the pacing. It never grabbed me. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And also, and I kind of skipped over the original Night of the Living Dead. But you're right. It is. I mean, there's a reason it's a classic. It is a solid. And I think you said you like the camp of it.
Absolutely.
Right? And because it was a cheap, kind of not a, it was just a cheap horror movie that, he was trying to put together to, have it a double feature at the drive-in or whatever. It wasn't supposed to be a big art piece or anything, but it's like, so that's where you find sometimes those nuggets. It's just kind of like I was saying with like Mad Max. I would say there's something about the ingenuity of the independent filmmaker and the passion that they put into it. Like when you don't have a budget, you have to I don't know. That's what I do enjoy, kind of like even bad movies. There's good movies, and then there's like movies that are just not good, and then there's bad movies where it like loops around. It's like, oh, those are actually fun to watch again. And I wouldn't say Night of the Living Dead's a bad movie, but it's not like it's not a polished. It's not there's the grittiness of it, which I guess people also with Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another example. Like there's something about that lo-fi element that makes it so much cooler. It just adds to the atmosphere. And
I would throw in that right now the modern equivalent that's happening basically at the moment is the Terrifier franchise.
Yeah,
I believe I could be. So the latest movie, number 3, had a $2 million budget. The movie previous to that had a $200,000 budget, which I don't even know how he made the movie for that. And the one before that was like 60 or maybe even less.
Wow.
But I haven't seen 1. I haven't seen 3, but I did see 2 simply because of all the buzz that was around it. It's not a great story, but my God, the effects that he pulls off with such a small budget. And that, you know, when you have a movie that sticks with you and you feel it for a long time afterwards, that's worth a lot. Yeah. And I wouldn't say for most people to go out and see the Terrifier movies, but I'm definitely going to see 3 when it comes out on video on demand for sure.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any of those yet. Like, I feel like I know if I was in my 20s, that would have been my favorite, you know, that series probably. I feel like I have to see them because that's, you know, they're it's like number 1 at the box office right now, right? Or it was last week, like nationally, I think.
And it beat the Joker, which might not be saying much, but at the same time, it is saying something.
Yeah, it's like it's a significant cultural thing, you know, and it's so exciting, like because it's kind of a dumb slasher movie, I guess, like that. I mean, from everything I've heard, you know, it's not a plot-driven film, you know, right? It's just a crazy, iconic horror villain killing people in creative ways. You know, we've like come back to Nightmare on Elm Street, you know.
And just to throw it out there, practical effects. Yeah. And I think that is what, like, in-camera practical effects. There's something to be said, even in today's age of CGI everything, that in-camera practical effects are worth a lot to people.
Yes. So that's one thing, like the Hellgate that I mentioned, you know, that's one of our things on that. It's all practical. And then the other one that I alluded to but didn't talk about is called Grinners. And I feel like it has, I mean, you know, and of course everybody that makes films, you know, believes they're making the coolest thing, right? But I feel like it has high, you know, like Terrifier potential. Like the villains we've got, and it's all practical effects as well. And like, yeah, I'll get to that later. But I feel like it could be a breakout kind of a cult hit and a horror icon in the making. But yeah, like I said, I'll talk about that more later.
So what's your next on your list?
Okay, well, this is kind of an odd one. I'm curious if you've seen it. You probably have. It's not that obscure, but it's Warriors, not The Warriors, but Warriors. Wizards. Jeez, Wizards. It's an animated film by Ralph Bakshi, who did Fritz the Cat, and he did a Hobbit film, and I think he even did a Lord of the Rings film. He did. What else is he known for? Later he did Cool World, which is a big.
Oh my goodness, with Brad Pitt.
Yeah, and like I'm a big fan of his. He's just a raw. His stuff. I have a book of his. It's sort of like an art, you know, picture book or whatever. It's called Unfiltered. You know, and kind of just his philosophy of it's like it's animation, like. Why wouldn't you do anything you can imagine? You know, that's the point, right? It's like you push the boundaries. It's because, you know, it's a complete fantasy. And so Wizard. So I don't know. It looks like maybe you're not familiar.
No, I am not.
Yeah, and it definitely has its camp elements as well. Like he wasn't the best writer, but he was like an auteur. You know, he did the writing and the animation, and you know he had vision, you know, but and so basically it is a fantasy film, again, yeah, not exactly horror, but it's kind of fantasy sci-fi that takes place after, you know, the big one after World War III, where the world has been wiped out, and you know the remnants of humanity have basically become like elves and fairies and like sort of magical creatures. And there's, you know, there are these 2 wizards. I think they're brothers. There's a good one and a bad one, of course, and they're like fighting. So, and the basically kind of the bad side is more like technology based, and they have these guys that have like, you know, laser guns basically, and the good side are more like the fairies and wizards that like kind of use magic to defend themselves and kill. But they also, you know, it's some, you know, they fight with swords and stuff. Some people are, you know, fighting with swords. Some people are fighting with guns. There's all this, you know, kind of asymmetrical stuff happening, but which is all theme, you know, part of the theme of it too. But what ultimately happens is, and this came out probably early 80s. I would say 82 or 3-ish.
Did I I have an animated film. You said Ralph Bakshi?
Yeah.
Bakshi? 1977.
77. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is another one.
There's the IMDb link if anybody's interested.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense movie. And what ends up happening is the bad wizard, Scorch, I think his name is. He finds a trove of Nazi propaganda films and starts using that. He as part of his sort of war machine, and it's like this. It's a like wild, and I think he even he gets some tanks and it's like this. It's just it's pretty intense. Like, yeah, it's worth checking out, I'd say, even though it's got its rough. So he was also really into rotoscoping, and he was I think he was kind of an innovator on that. I know that goes way back. I think they rotoscoped like Snow White in the 30s. Wasn't
Max Fleischer's Superman rotoscoped as well? I think
so. I think so. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a new technique, but he would incorporate that, and he would incorporate like film, like in Cool World, where you have the animated characters and the film, the live characters interacting, or even he had another movie. It wasn't called City Streets, but it's something like that, City Heat, or maybe something, I don't know. That it was like animated characters over like live backgrounds, and he had another one called Coonskin that was very that one's hard to find, and it's pretty reviled, but yeah, you can look that one up yourself. But
is that like Disney's Song of the South by chance?
Yes, I think it was kind of a reference to that in some ways, yeah. But very interesting film. And it incorporated live film elements along with animated elements, and yeah. So anyway, Wizards. I'm
gonna have to check that out. Quite often I will come across a movie that I'm like, I know Becky has zero interest in watching. So I tend to lay in bed a lot later than she does. She goes right to sleep. So quite often I'll download or get a movie that I think she probably has zero interest in, and I'll watch it. So this sounds like one of those that I'll watch in bed at night. I'm going to give it a shot.
Probably. Yeah. Like I said, it's definitely, I would say it's not for everyone, but it's a piece of art, I would say, as far as, like in animation, he really did something unique there.
All right, so my next one, this is the one that created the genre of prepper porn. And they didn't have a clue what they were doing, but almost every dude, either, the story of either bugging out or the guy who has to get home that comes in all the prepper books and all. This was the first one, and this is such a great film. It's from 1962, and it's called Panic in Year Zero. And it is probably, I don't know. This is a tough one for me to say, but it's probably my favorite apocalyptic film. It is a dad and the four of them, husband, wife, daughter, son. They've got a long, old, extended 1960s vehicle, the one you could sit like 12 bodies in the back. And they have a camper trailer attached to it. And they're up early in the morning getting ready to go camping somewhere. And they just start heading out, and they see a huge flash off in the distance. And that flash used to be LA. They had a whole bunch of nukes dropped on it. And they're far enough out into the mountains that they're okay where they are. Great film. And the whole thing is just, it's perfect. He goes to a hardware store and buys all the stuff he needs. He goes to a grocery store, buys what he needs. He's thinking, okay, let's go to these small little towns that are off the map so that maybe they haven't heard yet. And and then they go off into the woods, and they live in the mountains for, I don't know, weeks, months, whatever. And yeah, it's so good. One of the best of all time, I think. Black and white, well acted. The main actor, I'm going to look it up here to tell you. He also directed the film, and it is, if you haven't seen it, I bought it on Blu-ray as well. And it is perfect. Yeah, it's probably my favorite. And I've been looking for an original poster to hang up, but I don't want to pay what they're asking. Let's put it that way. And it has, Frankie Avalon, young Frankie Avalon's the son. And Ray Milland is the main actor and also directs the film. So he's directing and acting in the film.
Yeah. So far, I have not seen any of these that you've listed, except for the Crazies, which wasn't.
It's kind of fun. Hey, this is the best part of it. I love getting recommendations. I think that's why people like these episodes so much, is because it gives you a ton to chew on, literally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that sounds great. It kind of reminds me of a book that I read in 10th grade or something. I think it was called Z for Zachariah.
I've seen the book, and it is similar. Sorry, I've seen the movie. Mm-hmm. There's a film, and it's definitely similar.
Yeah. Because I think it was a girl that somehow survived, and she was the only person. It's just the story of her, surviving, just kind of, finding, food and water, and kind of in her little valley, I think. I don't know. It's been a long time, but
that's good.
That sounds cool. Yeah.
What's your next one?
So I meant to jump to this. When you mentioned how much you love a claustrophobic movie with few actors, and
I think I know what it is. I didn't mean to cut you off, but is it a fairly modern film or no?
Yes. I'd say within the last 10 years for sure.
Does it star Dan off Roseanne?
Yes, it does.
All right, you give him the title then, because it's on my list too.
Yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane. It is 10, right?
It is. What a perfect film. Now I'll shut up and let you talk. Go ahead.
Oh man. Oh yeah, I loved it. I remember I went and saw it in the theater, and it was better than I expected. Because I am the same way. I love an intense, especially like trapped in a small space with a crazy person type movie, and this one I felt like it might be almost a stretch because you don't know that the world's ended, of course, until the end. But that's kind of what the John Goodman character, is claiming. And just the suspense of it, and it's only 3 characters basically. I think there's like another woman that shows up at the door at one point, but then she's gone shortly after that. And I don't know, and it really is. The performances are great. The suspense is great, and it's just working with, it's a cool set, but I'm sure it wasn't a big budget thing. I love to see, I guess I tend to go to the kind of the technical side of things, instead of just talking about the script or the, but it's amazing. I don't know. It was just such a surprise, after Cloverfield, which right. I guess could be on this list as well. Yeah. Which I went back and watched it more recently. I didn't like it when it came out because I was like, "What is this? Shaky cam crap? You can't even see the monster." And I didn't like the characters or anything either. But I went back and I felt one thing that was interesting is like, after YouTube, the YouTube revolution, because it came out like, I don't know if YouTube was even online yet.
It would be really close, I'm thinking. Really close.
So this like camcorder, handheld aesthetic was, you would see it in your home movies, but it wasn't, you didn't see it every day, like in like media. And I feel like that's, part of, then it became everything you're watching online is somebody holding a camera or phone, mm-hmm. and it's shaky. And so now it's like, that was very jarring for people, I think, with the first Cloverfield, like seeing that on the big screen, people talking about motion sickness and everything, but then it just became the way videos looked, people got used to it. So I feel like if people went back and watched it again, that would be less of a complaint. I don't know if the movie would be any better, but I didn't mind it so much when I saw it later.
And it's an old, Hitchcock adage too. Like the monster you don't see is scarier than the monster you do. Mm-hmm. And it's also the, less is more. I didn't put signs on here because me and the Casual Preppers did an actual commentary for the movie. It was great, but so I've talked it to death, but it is one of my all-time favorites. And that's a really good example of less is more as well. You don't see the alien at all. Oh, anyway, until halfway through the movie, and even then it's a quick glance at a Brazilian kid's birthday party. couple of fingers under a door. And when you finally do see it, you're like, oh, okay, that CGI sucks, but it's fine. Yeah, but anyway, great film. But I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, one of my all-time favorites. I almost think they did it a slight disservice by pigeonholing it into the Cloverfield universe, but whatever. I liked it in spite of that, not because of it. Let's put it that way.
I agree. It didn't need, like, the ending was unnecessary too, you know. Absolutely. Like, I don't know what better ending there could have been if she would have just got out and walked away or what, but yeah. That was totally unnecessary, I guess.
I would have been cool with her either getting out, walking away, or her getting out, driving away, and ending to black. Yeah, I'm a big fan of ambiguity. The alien ending felt so much like studio notes, it made me a little mad. That was the only thing I hated about the film.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, same here. And I guess since before we move away from the claustrophobic thing, this one's not a apocalyptic movie, but one that's in the same vein as Cloverfield, or 10 Cloverfield Lane anyway, is Bug. Have you ever seen that? I think I may have mentioned it to you at one point.
I have not, but I'm going to add that to my list as well, because I have seen it's been recommended in different places over the years for me, but I haven't yet. So worth seeing.
Strongly recommend. Yeah, I love it. It's William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist and the French Connection. Did he do that? You know, he's a great filmmaker. Did a lot of stuff. So you know, it's got it's quality. Ooh. And it's super suspenseful. It's Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon in one of his early roles before he became, you know, such a name. And he is so good when he's crazy. Like, I haven't seen him do anything. I think Bug is probably his best role in anything.
I don't want to disagree because I haven't seen Bug, but have you ever seen Take Shelter?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to put that on my list, but that did pop into my head. Yeah. That's great too. I do.
He's gotten a little quiet in what he's done recently, but Michael Shannon, love him to death.
Yeah, he's one. I saw him in a movie called Jesus' Son, like on the movie channel in like 1997 or something. And I was like, this guy, what is up with this guy? Like, he's just so striking. And it was just like a tiny part, like he had like one line. And then he was in Cecil B. Demented, which is John Waters' film. Oh,
yeah. Pink Flamingo guy? Is that right?
Yeah. And it was one of his later, you know, more kind of Hollywood movies that it's pretty solid, you know. And actually, if you've never seen Serial Mom, throw that on your list. It's a great movie.
One of my podcasters I listen to really like that. I haven't seen it yet, but
yeah.
Is it my go next?
Yes, I think so.
I'm going to throw out this one here. 1984's made-for-TV Threads from BBC. Great film. I'm not going to go into great detail on this one simply because I've talked about it, but you go in knowing it's kind of a real-to-life news documentary about a nuke that was dropped on Sheffield, England, and it's an epic in the truest sense because it takes place over a decade. And it is, you don't go into this movie looking for a happy ending. I can't believe they played it on television, but it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. You might want some alcohol to get through it. I don't know, but it's a great movie.
You recommend a downer for that one?
Something. I don't know. Oh my, yeah, that's true. I don't know what, but just be prepared. It is that one and The Day After were made around the same time. They were both made for TV movies, but The Day After was filmed in the US using US, like, recognizable US TV actors, which kind of takes away from it a bit. Whereas Threads, again, I love British and Australian cinema anyway, but they used unknown actors, which really, really helps to the grittiness or the realness to it. But if you can only watch one, Threads is worth seeing.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. That's another one I have never seen, but I have seen that on lists or even just like articles, you know, or whatever they call them, you know, clickbait type things where they're just like the scariest film ever made or whatever, or the most, because right when they played it, it was was it kind of like almost a War of the Worlds type thing where people thought it was like a real thing that was
somewhere,
happening?
or it was definitely put off as this could really happen tomorrow. I mean, this was the height of the Cold War. This was, the 80s, just scared shitless of nukes before the Berlin Wall fell, before the collapse of the USSR. And it was scary. It was a real threat at the moment.
Right. Yeah. I remember my mom. Like we were driving around one day and in the 80s when I was, 5-6 years old, and there was like the tornado sirens went off, and she's like, "Oh no, I wonder if the Russians are nuking us."
Oh.
Yeah, that's one of my early memories. That's a little insight into my psyche, I guess. But I prefer the other side of it, where like Class of Nukem High and even Return of the Living Dead, where it's like, I don't know, we might get blown up, but we'll just have some fun with it.
What do you got next?
Okay, let's see here. Well, so I guess on that cheerful note, so this is real arty. The Sacrifice by Tarkovsky.
Oh my, okay.
And this is one I watched during 2020, like lockdown times, when everything was great. I was like, I know what I should watch is like a bunch of these really depressing, long, like Soviet era, philosophical films. And this was, it's a powerful movie, but it is a slow movie. He also did Stalker. That's one he's and Solaris is probably the one that people are most familiar with because they did the remake with Clooney and stuff. But Stalker and The Sacrifice, I think, are both kind of post-apocalyptic. Stalker is much more mysterious. They don't really explain what happened, but there's like a wasteland that they go into, and there's like some kind of magical stuff that happens, but in a terrible way. It's fascinating. It's like watching a painting almost. It's beautiful. It's worth checking out, but if you have the time, maybe
it says
maybe a couple
2 hours 29 on IMDb. So is it scant on dialogue as well, or is it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of like walking around in like industrial wasteland kind of environments, and but there's like this. I want to say, I almost said compelling mystery, but it's like, it's more just confusing, and it's almost frustrating. And then it's like, but I don't know. There's something, it's like magical. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's a one of a kind type thing. But The Sacrifice, so that's Stalker that I'm referring to.
Okay.
But The Sacrifice is the one that I actually had on my list. Even though it takes place kind of before, because I think it's got a little more appeal, a little more broad appeal, and possibly more powerful in its actual like message. It's like a group of people in a farmhouse they're having kind of a family reunion type thing. I don't remember exactly what the dynamic is, but they don't really get along. And then it comes on the TV that and this is in Soviet Union in the 80s. And the word, news comes on, and the bombs are dropping. Everybody, it's over, and so they have to deal with that, and they, they deal with in different ways, and there's some. It's very introspective, I mean, some of the characters freak out, of course, and but it's I don't want to give anything away on that one, even though it's 40 years old.
Is it? I'm just going to ask this, and you don't have. Is the title literal at some or no?
I would say yes, but probably not in the way that you might imagine.
Even better. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Because I think this sounds like I'm going to write this one down in my list as well, because this sounds like one I'd love to see.
Yeah, but it is also it is a slow burn, it's, I don't know. It's an experience.
Okay. All right. My next one, I'm 1988's Miracle Mile. And this was one that I missed for almost, I bet, damn near 20 years. Didn't know it existed. And one night, Becky and I had just got married, And we had what they called the movie networks back then, maybe 05, 06, living in our little house out on a backwoods road. And it came on and she's like, oh, you got to watch this. Because she's only 2 years older than me, but she grew up with a dad who's shown her all the 80s movies. I grew up with 90s films. She grew up with 80s films. And Miracle Mile is Anthony Edwards from ER fame. And he's on Sunset Strip or whatever in LA. And he's outside a coffee shop or a diner. The phone rings. He picks it up. And it's somebody saying there's 2 hours, or at sunrise, it's over. The nukes are coming. And he knows he has no time to do anything, but he just met a woman an hour or so earlier, fell in love with her, let her go home, or, thought he was, and decide the rest of the movie is him going and finding the girl and the very rapid collapse of society in LA. Great movie. Again, it is just dripping in 80s Los Angeles setting. Oh, it's beautiful. Some of those, I can't remember the exact design, the architecture name of them, but those beautiful diners of like the 50s through 80s look to them. Oh man, it's a wonderful film. I love the movie. It's, it has its issues for sure, but I love it. The dread, but also just the beauty of 80s LA. And I mean, it's hard to call it beautiful, but it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love stuff like that. That are like time capsules of, well, like, it's one of Scorsese's lesser known. It's like his comedy that everybody.
The King of Comedy?
No. Which I guess that's also kind of but no, the one where the guy gets lost, or he gets he's like a stockbroker or something, and he's like this artist. He's like, I'm going to go to Soho tonight, and he ends up getting like trapped in a artist or loft, and like, does somebody just?
I'll find it here. I like Scorsese a lot, but I'm not like, I don't listen to everything.
It's After Hours is what it's called.
Okay.
And a lot of his movies are, like a love letter to New York City or whatever. But that one, there's something about just that scene, because this guy, he's an outsider wandering around in New York, late at night at the, in the 80s, in Soho, where there's all the artist lofts and the clubs, and it's like a really, I don't know, it's just really fun, like just to see the city that doesn't exist anymore,
I'm the type of guy that when you see movies in the 80s like that, like when they take place, let's say in the New York City subway, I'm always looking in the background to see the posters and the dilapidation. And that I like the setting almost more than the film itself when it comes to those sort of eras.
Oh, for sure. Well, like The Warriors that I kind of accidentally referred to earlier is a great, even though that's kind of, I don't know how much set dressing they did on that. Well, I guess Escape from New York, I guess, is another, but I guess they shot that in East St. Louis because it actually looked like a war zone.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But let's take that to the other end of things, because in the 80s they filmed RoboCop, was supposed to be in Detroit, and for some reason they filmed it in Dallas. And I mean, what better place for a post-apocalyptic wasteland than Detroit in the late 80s? I mean, but they just for some reason they filmed it in Dallas, so I don't know.
Yeah. I guess, it looked like the city of the future, I guess.
So what do you got next on your list?
Let's see here. I'm going to, okay, so, actually, probably one of my favorites for this particular list would be 12 Monkeys.
Oh, really? Man, I haven't watched that since VHS days, and maybe I should go back and rewatch it. What is it about that film that still appeals to you?
Well, that's one of my other. I'm going to break out of the world building thing, even though it does have fairly satisfying world building. Another thing I love is timey-wimey stuff. I love the time travel, the paradoxes, and all that stuff. How because every filmmaker, writer has a different set of rules that they play by, right? You have to establish your, how things work. And I thought just the way they did it was really fun, really interesting. Well, it's Terry Gilliam too. So, it was really wacky, and stuff looked cool. And just the, I thought it was just really effective at this, like ratcheting up of the intensity of it. It had like a good sense of dread around it. And then also kind of the unreliable narrator, like the guy, he's like in a, the psych ward, and it's like, well, and nobody believes him. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's like a moment where as a watching the film, it's like, well, is this all in his head, And yeah, which I always enjoy.
I'm a huge fan of unreliable narrators. It adds something to the movie, and it allows the filmmaker to break their own rules a bit without insulting your intelligence. Because something I was going to say about time travel films is my biggest, I don't know, pet peeve or what. The thing I love when it's done right is when the rules are established and you follow the rules to a logical conclusion, and the story's written within that. What I really hate is when they're like, here's our rules, and then at the very end they're like, because time travel, the answer, it's like the hand of God almost, right? It's just, they just wave it away. But Back to the Future is a perfect example of setting the rules, following the rules, and telling a compelling story within that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, and have you seen Primer? That's like I
have.
Yeah, it was a real small indie movie, but it had a pretty good following for a while. I bet it was 20. I don't know. It probably came out right around 2000, I guess.
Okay.
And very, very low budget. And one of the things they did that was so smart that actually I have a film on my list here that, again, it's kind of a stretch. It's just one that I wanted to talk about that I guess I'll make that my next because I think you're up. But yeah, it's just a time travel thing but they don't explain how the time machine works. They don't really show it in action because it's more of a character driven drama that uses time travel as a device, but it's very their rule set, they're very strict, it's very they don't stray, even though it does get very complicated, and it's just really satisfying.
Okay. I dig it. All right. So let's see. We've already talked about Dawn of the Dead, the remake. We talked about 10 Cloverfield Lane. I skipped over the original Red Dawn was on my list, but we've talked about that ad nauseum on here as well. But if you haven't seen it, if Panic in Year Zero created prepper porn, Red Dawn brought survivalist porn to the, and that was the 80s. When you think preppers in the 80s, it was survivalist. Go out in the woods and live on your own and be a lone wolf. And Red Dawn, to me, I love the movie. It's overacted, but who hasn't watched that and fantasized a little bit, or especially when you were younger, about, imagine those North Koreans or the Cubans land it, and I'm going to go out in the woods and do exactly. And who hasn't shouted Wolverines at the top of their lungs at one point? I at least, but it's a great film. I don't think I saw it. Well, obviously I didn't see it because I was only 3 when it came out, but either late 80s or early 90s is when I saw it first. And I kind of fell in love with it about the same time that I did when I discovered Miracle Mile. So if you're one of the 3 people out there that hasn't seen that movie, do yourself a favor and watch the original and pretend like the remake didn't happen.
Yeah, I haven't seen that probably since high school. I don't remember it that well, but I do remember enjoying it a lot more than I expected to. Like I always kind of, I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, I was sort of a snob at times, and I was just kind of, it's like, well, if people like it, it must not be good, right?
I get it. I get it. I get that way sometimes. And then I got to remind myself, it's a subjective medium. Enjoy it. I watched Shyamalan's recent movie, the one where it takes place at the concert, Taylor Swift. Trap. I loved that movie. And that was in spite of all the critics saying how shitty it was, and some of the fans even saying how crappy it was. I watched it, loved it. Almost every bit of it. There were some points, but a lot of the criticism seemed a little heavy-handed. And if you watched it based on what it was, I liked it. But anyway, Byron Roberts says the chair is against the wall. For anybody who's ever seen Red Dawn, it's a radio message. So,
yeah, but I'd say with Shyamalan, it's like popular it's trendy to hate him, right?
It's like hating Nickelback. I'd love to go to a Nickelback concert, and everybody else is like, "Oh, they suck." I'm like, "Why?" Well, because the TV told me. I don't know, whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
What do you got next?
Well, so the film I alluded to, I guess I'll go ahead and do it, even though again it's kind of a stretch. It's a time travel thing. It's like the premise is that people come back from the future because there's like a virus that is killing people, and they have to figure out. They've traced it back to this source. This party that's happening at this house, and really the post-apocalyptic element is not much of an element of it. They just refer to it. It's just basically a plot device. But it just was such a fun movie. This is one that I saw it's called 11 Minutes Ago.
Wow, I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it is. I saw it at a film festival, and I don't think it got any sort of release. The acting wasn't great, but it was like the script, it was so tight. And this one is probably more of just, if we did a time travel movie, this would belong on that list. But it just came into my mind when I thought of 12 Monkeys. And so I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to throw this out there because it was such a cool premise. So, it's just so effective the way it worked. So the idea was in this future, they have this time machine that they can only generate enough power to send a person back one time per year for 11 minutes. And you have to do it sequentially. So sequentially in reverse. So the movie starts with the 8th trip that the guy has taken. It's taken 8 years for him to make this final trip. And at this point, he's just showing up at the party. Nobody knows him, but he knows everybody else. He's already had relationships with everybody over the course of this hour and a half that he spent at this party.
Sure. I get that part too. Okay.
Yeah, but to everybody else, they've never seen him before. And so so the relationships form in reverse of each other. Like it was a great, like it was so well written. It was just really cool. But yeah, like I said, I don't know. That is definitely a stretch on the post-apocalyptic thing.
That's all right. I know. No, it's not. You've got a stretch to make a big list in this, and I like it. But
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, and I guess just one detail about that I loved was because it was such a low budget film. The trick, the time machine was he just had to go in the bathroom and turn the light off.
That's awesome.
And they're like, it doesn't work in the light, and he would just go in there, and then somebody would open the door, and it would be empty. It was like and they didn't act like that was sophisticated or anything, but it was just smart. I thought, just because you can't explain it anyway. So
15, 16-year-old me would have loved this. And I give a shout out to my film studies professor in college, Dave Troughton, who was what an awesome dude. He's still around, but he always used to get so mad. He said, why did they take a good movie and remake it? He said, why don't they go back and take a movie with a good theme or like a good solid story that was put together poorly and make it better? And this seems to me like this would be a perfect example of a movie that could be picked up by somebody with a $2 to $5 million budget and turn it into something really good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause the script is there. I mean, and it like I only saw it once at a film festival, and like, I don't know if the dialogue was great or whatever, but it was very effective. Like the emotionality of it. Cause of course, like there's a kind of a love story that happens where, as the guy is totally in love with this girl, but she doesn't even know him. But then at the end, the first time he meets her, she is in love with him and doesn't want him to go. And by that point, she knows the story, but he doesn't know what's going on.
Wow. Okay.
To kind of thoroughly spoil the
reminds me a little bit of Memento in a sense, not completely, but in that, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go with my last one, and I think if you want to, you can pick one more on your list after as well. So I'm going to go with, and this is one that most haven't heard of, and I rewatched it in the last 12 months and loved it more than I did the first time. 1998's Last Night. And it is a Canadian film starring Sandra Oh, and it was directed by Don McKellar. It was filmed in Toronto, which was kind of cool. And let me see if I can find who is there's a famous director, or a semi-famous director that has a cameo in it. David Cronenberg. He plays. He has a bit of a role. He plays the head of an electric utility company, and the whole movie, it's similar to some other movies you've seen or shows in the last few years. Actually, there was an animated film recently, or animated series called Carol at the End of the World on Netflix, which I don't think I've mentioned at all. And it was really quite cool. It's different anyway, but I won't go into that, but similar premise. So they announced to the world that there is some incoming celestial calamity. They don't exactly explain it. I assume it's a meteorite or a comet or something going to hit the planet. And the entire movie takes place in the last night of civilization. And it's going around having these banal conversations with some people, hearing what other people have done. And just this one lady who really doesn't, Sandra, of course, she plays the part really well. And she just doesn't have anybody really. And she runs into Don McKellar. You'd recognize the actor. He looks a little bit like Belky off of Perfect Strangers. But she runs into him and they just decide to spend their last evening together. It's a really kind of, there's points in it that, there's some hard R stuff in the movie, but at the same time, it's just, again, it's a bleak, there's no hope in this movie. There's no hand of God salvation at the end. It's just literally, the end of the movie is going to end up in an explosion. And so you're on for the ride, and it is worth. Sarah Polley's in it as well. A lot of Canadian film royalty. So if you haven't seen it, guys, it's hard to find, but do yourself a favor and watch it. I love it.
I know I feel like maybe I bought this VHS at one point or something, and I don't know. This is very familiar to me, but I don't know that I ever watched it, or maybe I've just seen it on cable or something.
It was probably an HBO movie at times, or Showtime, one of those. It very much got a lot of play on cable TV late at night in the late 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But I love it. I hope that I haven't found it on Blu-ray yet, but I'm definitely looking to pick it up for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to read this comment here, and then I'll let you pick one more movie here. But this comes from David Hosfeld. He says, I hope someone mentions Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme, one of the best terrible post-apocalyptic movies of the late 80s. Maybe sometime we should do a show on horrible post-apocalyptic films, or so bad it's good,
I remember that one. I liked that movie. I probably would have been 8 or 10 when that came out. I remember renting that one.
I don't know if I've ever seen this one, but let me leave it at this. I like Van Damme infinitely better than Steven Seagal. I love his movies, and I enjoyed a ton of them as a kid. I was an Arnold guy, though. I really liked Arnold Schwarzenegger more than anything. But yeah, I don't think I've seen Cyborg. If at some point I ever find the time to do a full-time movie podcast, like a once a week or once a month, it'll be something like this, where I go back and watch some of the 80s and 90s stuff. I even had an idea recently where I watched, I don't know what to call it, but stuff that I used to watch at my best friend's house on their couch on VHS. We used to have a group of 5 or 6. We'd go down to the local rental store. We'd rent a movie and watch it. And I'm thinking about making a whole list of all the shit that I haven't seen since the mid 90s, and then picking one a month and sitting down and watching it with my 14-year-old twin daughters, and then do the kind of their thoughts and my thoughts on it afterwards, and see, because it's fun bringing in that Gen Alpha mindset and to kind of go back and reformulate your vision on a movie. So anyway, we may do that at some point.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I like that. Yeah.
So what do you got for the last one for us?
Oh man, it's so hard to decide. I think okay, I just want to throw out just some titles.
Yeah, go for that. Maybe that's what I should have said. Throw out some bonus picks here and there.
Yeah, and then maybe I guess I'll end. I think I know which one I want to actually discuss, just because I think you should watch it if you haven't seen it. I have the Phantasm series on here.
Yep.
Which is not really, I don't think, typically thought of probably as a post-apocalyptic movie, because it doesn't really happen until the third movie at the end, right? That's kind of spoiler again. But I love Don Coscarelli, like his vision. Like he's another one. He's the writer director world builder of the Phantasm series. And anyway, okay, I'm going to move on. Like I said, I'm just throwing out titles, but yeah, just the ambition of such a low budget production, ending the world at the end of the third movie, and then continuing. I don't know.
I love it.
And then I had just a whole list of like 70s, kind of that post-apocalyptic. Planet of the Apes, Logan's Run, Omega Man, Last Man on Earth, I think was earlier, like 50s, 60s. The Vincent Price one. Yeah. I love that movie. That's a great, solid, and pretty clean, family friendly into the world movie. And it's the classic I Am Legend story. Just
the first one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, with with Vincent Price. Fallout, the show and the games. I thought I threw that in here. Love that whole world.
Real quick, back to the 70s. I don't know if you're going to mention it, but my favorite version of Body Snatchers, Invasion of Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland. There's been tons of versions made, but the one from the 70s, you could make a case that's an apocalyptic film.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. That's a good one. I've never seen that. I know that image of him like
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Planet A, Fallout, I threw Demons on here. That's a stretch. That's another one where at the end the world ends. Basically, the demons take over. Also worth checking out if you want just a really cheesy Italian zombie movie, kind of zombies. It's called Demons though, but they're basically zombies. People trapped in the theater. The woman starts, pricks her face on this weird mask and becomes a demon, and everybody just gets killed in gory.
Is it an Argento film, or is it somebody?
It is Bava. It's I think it's Mario Bava's son. So okay. it's in the lineage, but it's not one of the great ones. Sure. And there is a sequel. There's at least one sequel that's even worse. But that's one I grew up with. Okay. I watched it again recently, and it was not as good as I remembered, but it's still fun. Tom Thumb is a claymation, stop motion animation film that I don't know that it's explicitly a post-apocalyptic thing or if it's just sort of a surreal alternate reality type thing, but it is amazing. Definitely. Probably that should be the one. I haven't seen it for so long. I can't I don't feel like I could talk about it very well, but sure. It's like The Adventures of Tom Thumb, I think is what it's called. And if you find the one that looks like the brothers, the one that looks like a Tool video from the 90s, that's fair the enough. One. Brothers Quay, I think, was like some artist that had they didn't make that movie, but they were stop motion artists that did stuff that looked like that.
There it is. Yeah. From 1993. That makes sense. Sure.
Really cool.
Dave Bothwick, okay. Something like that.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I kind of dragged. Okay. Did you see that Raised by Wolves series?
No.
Ridley Scott produced, maybe even directed. It was on HBO or Max or whatever. And it's bizarre. I don't know if I even liked it. It was just so weird. It's worth a look probably. And it's sort of like far future, sci-fi thing. The Earth has been there's a holy war between atheists and what are they? They're like Mithrists. They're okay. Who worship like a sun god, and it's gotten to the point where the Earth is going to be destroyed, and the atheists have their religion is science, so they've created these androids, and they like it's the classic they send out arcs because the Earth is about to be destroyed. They're going to go try to populate other planets, and of course it all goes wrong, But there's like heavy like religious symbology, and but it's just crazy. It's just crazy, like the sci-fi stuff, and some of it is just so cheesy. It feels like like a bad Planet of the Apes ripoff, but some of it is just amazing. It's like a really weird show.
David Hosfeld says the Book of Eli was another great post-apocalyptic movie. I like it, and they're in the process of making a prequel series to it as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. It's got the African American actor from the new Star Wars movies. British guy, I can't remember his name, but yes.
Oh yeah, I had.
And Letty Lou says, I did not see that twist coming in the Book of Eli. It was so good. I'm going to say that Eli himself didn't see it coming. Oh, sorry about the dad joke there. Oh boy. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. And then I'll close on, or did you have another one? Am I?
You know what? Before you give your final one, I'm going to do a quick little lightning round of stuff I've seen recently. So not all of it's post-apocalyptic. Some of it is stuff I haven't even seen, but stuff that have been recommended recently. So anyway, Talk to Me. If you guys haven't seen Talk to Me, horror movie made by, again, it checks all the boxes. A very low budget horror movie made in Australia. It ended up being made by 2 YouTubers who did horror shorts and stuff. And the movie was way better than it should have been. Loved it. We saw it in theaters. I'll definitely watch it again. Yeah. We might have touched on it. I don't think we did. I can't remember. The new Evil Dead. I think we did talk about that last year. I can't remember exactly when it came out, but I loved it. Loved it. Evil Dead Rise.
Okay, the new one.
The new one. I mean, I really enjoyed the older one from 10 years ago. The problem with it was it was just violent. It was mean-spirited, which is fine. You know, but it was made in the vein of Hostel. Whereas Evil Dead Rise was made in the vein of the original Evil Deads. Both horror and comedy, full of camp, everything that a really good legacy sequel should be. And again, because I'm a sucker for it, enclosed space, small cast of characters. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and do that. Now, 2 horror movies that I have not seen. So these are not recommendations, but I wanted to mention them while I had you on here so you could also hear of them. One, as soon as I heard about it, made me think of you. Stop Motion is what it's called. And it is about a lady who makes stop motion movie stuff. And I think it's a bit of an unreliable narrator situation where maybe it comes to life, but either way, we'll leave it at that. Now, this next one, don't watch it. At least you might want to see it, but I'm just going to put it out there. I just found out about it the other night. Red Letter Media is one of my favorite. It is my favorite movie channel on YouTube. They're great. Jay really has a twisted love he loves a lot of like Italian horror and really dark. The darker and the twisted, the better. This one, I believe, is Spanish, and it's called The Coffee Table. Have you heard about it?
No.
So look it up. Do yourself a favor. Anybody who decides they're thinking about watching it, spoil it first. Because the thing that happens in the movie is this couple who goes and buys a coffee table that they have to assemble. And the thing that happens is really fucking bad. So before you think about watching this, spoil it for yourself, because knowing what happens doesn't hurt the movie any, but it'll tell you whether you want to see it or not. That's as far as I'm going with it. I went to the drive-in twice this year. I've never been to a drive-in in my life. Finally went to it. The Birdsong Drive-In Theater in Camden. I spent 2 months in Tennessee this year. Well, longer than that, actually, but 2 months uninterrupted. And I went and saw Back to the Future, which was such an experience. The weather was beautiful. I watched it by myself, just sat outside and watched it. And somebody came with a DeLorean there. It was great. What a great experience. So the next week, we had a delinquent get-together. I think 7 or 8 of us went. We saw Jaws on the other theater. And it was beautiful. It was April, May, but it got so cold. We needed blankets. We almost froze our butts off. Like, it was so bad, but it was fun. So anyway, it was good. Quick plug for those 2 Gen Z horror-ish movies. We're all going to the World's Fair, and I saw the TV Glow. I think it's important to watch things with an open mind. I think it's important to try to watch things made by the generations that are coming after us. It doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with them. It doesn't mean I'm going to like them. But I think it's important to try to at least appreciate where they're coming from. And that's what I did with these movies. And yeah, worth seeing. And then quick note on some classic Hitchcock movies. We've gone back and watched 3 different Hitchcock films that we bought on Blu-ray for me and the girls: Rear Window, The Birds, and Rope. We talked about Rope last year. It's still probably my favorite Hitchcock film. The girls, Charlotte liked Rear Window the best of the 3, and I think Alice liked The Birds. But Charlotte fell in love with The Birds, and she was surprised that Rear Window was even better. She liked it that much. Yeah, and then one more movie that has nothing to do with this at all, but we went back and watched it, called It Happened One Night. And it is a 1930s black and white. It is the original rom-com. If you go back and watch it, it 100% sets the pattern and storyline for all rom-coms to come after it. Charlotte picked it. We bought it it was only on DVD. I don't think it's on Blu-ray that I could find. And I loved it. So if you're looking for a good, wholesome 1930s black and white romance, what a great movie. Totally doesn't fit the theme of this show, but I want to get it out there for anybody who hasn't seen it. So, all right. So your ultimate pick for this evening.
Well,
what was it?
And ultimate just in the way in that it's the last. It's not necessarily. I didn't save it for the last. It's just it's the last survivor on the list. But it was. I actually have been thinking about going back and watching it again. And it's a Dark series on Netflix. It's German. Oh, I think I may have mentioned it last year.
No, I think I might have tried to watch some of it, but keep going.
Yeah, we tried to watch it, I think, twice before we got into it. It starts very slow. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere, but once you get into it, it's another one. It's more of a time travel, alternate dimension kind of thing. But there's definitely like a kind of post-apocalyptic, or at least like it's basically, it is. And it's hard to say much about it without spoiling it, because it is so slow, methodical, the way that it reveals the information. But it is it's like Primer that I mentioned earlier. Like they have, I would love to see their Bible of, how they've got their characters and their arcs. They have to have that locked down, because it is I think it's 6 seasons or something. Wow. And there are arcs that span seasons, with the characters and things that are set up. And it's all it was, I think, there's, of course, it's not 100%. There's some episodes that lag, and there's some stuff that doesn't pay off quite like you might hope or whatever. But just as a whole thing, I was very impressed with it. And I do recommend it.
Well, I think we did pretty good. An hour and 37 to get all our movies in, and we talked about. So Ian asked earlier if I could put together a master list. What I can do is if you can send me your 20, if you want, even the ones that you didn't talk about, I'll add my 10 to it, plus anything I wrote down that you mentioned. I'll just, I'll make a list and we'll just throw it. So if you're listening to this now, within the next 24 hours, it should be added, I think, if we get around to it, to the description. So, okay.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't even talk about on here, so I could send you 35 probably.
Oh, sure, man. Whatever you want. So fill us in as we're finishing up. What do you got coming up? How do people support you? That kind of stuff.
I need to figure out how people can support me. That'd probably be a good idea. I'm working on that. So I guess probably the most exciting thing that's coming up that hopefully people can keep an eye out for and coming to probably not a theater near you, but somewhere hopefully where you can see it. I've got a film called Grinners, and it's a super low budget horror film. It's the one I was talking about earlier that I feel like is, possibly, I honestly feel like it has iconic horror villain potential. Nice. And it's these really cool, and the guy that's making it, it's this guy named Jared Hussey that is just such a whirlwind of energy and just passion. And he just knows his stuff. He's truly a horror fan, and he just really has vision, and it's super exciting. And I sent you a link to the Facebook page, because that's how he's doing most of his, kind of putting his information out right now. And so, go check that out if you're interested. kind of well, I don't know if he's releasing plot points yet. He's releasing a lot of stills and stuff. It just looks so cool. Like, you can't help but.
It's going to be a feature, right? Not just a short.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so everybody knows all the links to all this stuff. I've got, so you sent me like a 2-minute short. I've got the link to that, and I've got the link to the Facebook page and a couple other ones. Anything you sent me is all in the descriptions tonight too, folks. So if you want to check it out. All
right. Yeah. And that's something I'm very excited about. And he is part of his kind of marketing plan is he's going to be traveling around, going to like horror conventions and film festivals with the two leads, like in costume and doing like photo ops and kind of developing sort of this, hopefully, some buzz and sort of just getting, because he has a music background. He had a band in the early 2000s, like a horrorcore band, like played with ICP and stuff. And so it's like, I don't know, I feel like there's an interesting, I feel, we have to do something in the filmmaking and film industry, especially as independent filmmakers now, right? Like, because people aren't even going to the theater to see the blockbusters anymore. I mean, right. Not in the numbers they used to. And I feel like, we have to create a reason for people to come out, and make it an event. And he's trying to do that. And I think it's pretty exciting. Okay. And then, I guess final thing, like my baby that I mentioned earlier is Radioactive Theater. I have been, for like the last 4 months, I've been kind of renovating our social media and our websites and trying to get like multicam streaming thing going. We do a monthly live show. It's in the style of old time radio, like, The Shadow or Lone Ranger or whatever. It's an audio drama or audio play. But we do perform it live with, I produce the sound effects and music and it's all like original, new content, new stories, new character, it's stuff that we write, in our group. And I'm hoping I have like 11 episodes or 12 episodes of podcasts out there. If you look for Radioactive Theater, but I'm not really that happy with them. So what I've done, we did a reboot, what I'm referring to as a reboot, back in September or August, because we had some road shows coming up and we were going to go play in a bigger city and to a new audience. I was like, well, let's just go back to number ones, because we've been doing this for 6 years. We've got one of our shows, we've got like over 60 episodes of it. So nobody if you haven't seen us live, you don't know what's going on, So I was like, yeah, we're like, let's start over, at least in the numbering, and I'll just record the shows live and put those out as podcasts, because we foolishly didn't record the early performances, and so the podcast episodes that are out there, we had gone into the studio and recorded those, and there's just so much. I just didn't have time for the production to like edit but since we're already doing the live shows and I'm just recording them live and I can put them out, I think I should be able to keep up with the podcast now. So that should be coming within the next 2 weeks or so, like the whole reboot. But you can go check out some of the episodes, some of the older episodes that are there now, and get some idea of what it's about. And also, if you follow us on Facebook or whatever, we do live stream every month on the Radioactive Theater Facebook page.
You sent me the link, and I was on the road at the time, so I couldn't. But I was, but I'm going to listen to some of the recordings. I'm kind of excited about that, actually. Yeah, cool.
Well, let me know what you think. And I am working on, like I said, like I'm trying to do the whole the StreamYard, stream it to YouTube and Facebook and all the Rumble and everything. But I have just been having ridiculous technical issues with my gear. I've been struggling with that and trying to anyway. But that's not that interesting to talk about. So I'll just leave it on. Yeah, check out Radioactive Theater, please.
Well, thanks, Worm. I appreciate you. If you want to hang in the back for just a second, I'll close up the show and I'll be right back with you.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Well, guys, I hope you appreciated that show. That was a lot of fun. This is one of the excuses, everybody's spooky season this year, Halloween. I love Halloween. I love horror movies, and I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic, and I'm also a sucker for good conversation with good friends, and that's half the reason I like to bring Worm on is so we can just, because we live so far apart, the only time we get to talk is at live events, this time at Gully Days, and occasionally on the show. And it's fun to be able to twist things around and have a little bit of fun with the scarier side, because prepping doesn't always have to be serious. It shouldn't be. Life doesn't need to be serious. You should be able to relax, be entertained, enjoy art, and art in all forms, whatever you're into. And hopefully Worm's passion for film comes through. If you get a chance to support him, do it. Check out his shorts. I'm a huge proponent of supporting folks within our community for all types of creation. When you look at Delinquent's Gully and the cabin we have there, there's a ton of things there made by folks from the community. That means a lot. But there's also folks out there that make slightly more intangible things, like a film that we can also support, or music. And I'm not saying they're intangible or anything, just that they're harder to put your hands on. So give them some support, because everything is a labor of love. So anyway, Will, you're obviously invited back anytime you want to come. So guys, I appreciate you for coming on, hanging out with us for a nearly 2-hour retrospective of some of the bleakest moments in Hollywood history. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.